Have you ever noticed that the world praises power? Security systems worth millions, steel gates that stand like silent soldiers, bodyguards trained to shoot, to scan, to anticipate every move. Boards approve budgets for armored cars. Investors applaud risk mitigation. Articles celebrate unbreachable compounds and next-gen protection protocols. We build walls higher, we add more cameras, we design doors so heavy they barely remember how to open. And yet, sometimes, the person we trust most with our life isn't the one holding a weapon, but the one holding our child's hand. Not the man with the earpiece, not the driver with tactical training, not the consultant with a 7-figure contract, but the woman who knows which nightmare makes your child wake up crying, the one who remembers which cartoon makes them laugh, which prayer calms them down when thunder shakes the windows. What if I told you a Silicon Valley billionaire, a man who built his empire on distrust, who made his fortune assuming everything and everyone was a potential threat? A man whose house was guarded like a fortress, who lived behind lasers, cameras, retina scanners, panic rooms, encrypted gates, and security teams that moved like a private army. One day woke up, walked through his home lined with motion sensors and steel, looked at every man who swore to protect him, and fired all of them. Not after a budget cut, not after a scandal, not after a merger. He fired them because of something he saw, something he felt, something that shook him more than any headline ever had. Every single bodyguard, every security consultant, every surveillance strategist, dozens of men, years of training, millions in contracts, gone in one morning, one signature, one announcement, one decision that made his board think he'd finally snapped. And then, unbelievably, he pointed at one woman, a quiet Filipina nanny in her late 40s who had never held a weapon, never trained in security, never worn a bulletproof vest, never raised her voice above a gentle call for kids, time to eat, and said, "From today on, the safety of my children belongs to her." No tactical code name, no rank, no uniform, just ailing Alma, the nanny who knew which stuffed toy his daughter refused to sleep without, who remembered that his son was afraid of loud doors, who hummed old Filipino lullabies in a house full of American machines. People thought he was losing his mind. Executives exchanged worried glances. Security companies called, demanding explanations. Blogs whispered that grief, stress, or age had finally broken the tech fortress of Palo Alto. But they didn't know what he knew. They hadn't seen what he'd seen on a night when alarms screamed and his entire system, designed to protect everything he owned, failed to protect the only 2 lives that truly mattered. Not yet. Before we reach that moment, before the headlines, before the hushed conversations in boardrooms, before the shock that shook Silicon Valley. We have to go back. Back before the sirens. Back before the crisis. Back before a billionaire questioned everything he believed about safety. Because every extraordinary story has an ordinary beginning. And this one begins not with a breach in a firewall, not with a bug in a billion-dollar system, not with a hacker halfway across the world, but with a woman stepping off a long-haul flight, carrying a worn-out suitcase, a small rosary in her pocket, and a heart that had already learned to love children who weren't even hers. Her name was Alma Reyes, born in Pangasinan, raised in humidity and laughter, where mornings smelled like rice cooking over charcoal, and afternoons tasted of guava freshly picked from the neighbor's tree. A world where slippers dry by the door, where kids chase each other through dusty barangay roads, where life is simple. Not easy, but simple in the way only grace can make things simple. She grew up surrounded by carabaos and rice fields, mud between her toes, sunburn on her shoulders, and evenings where neighbors sang under coconut trees, their voices rising like prayer, some off-key, some angelic, all perfectly human, She wasn't rich, she wasn't loud. She wasn't the kind of woman who demanded space. If life were a room full of people, she would be the one quietly fixing plates, refilling glasses, making sure everyone had food before she ate herself. Alma was soft-spoken, the kind whose voice rarely rises above the sound of rain, yet somehow calms you more than silence ever could. One of those women who can comfort without touching, who can teach without lecturing, who can heal without medicine, just presence. She had 3 children of her own, each one a universe inside her heart. But like many Filipinos chasing opportunity, she made the sacrifice no parent wants to make. She left them to work abroad, painfully, quietly, with a strength that never looks like strength until you realize how much it takes to board that plane alone, like countless mothers who stare at airports with wet eyes, who fold family pictures into their wallets, who whisper prayers through cracked lips. Lord, bantayan mo sila habang wala ako. Lord, give them joy even if I cannot be there. Lord, let this sacrifice mean something. She spent years working in Hong Kong, waking before sunrise, cooking rice with one hand while ironing uniforms with the other. Then Singapore, learning bus routes by memory, sending money home peso by peso, each transfer a lifeline for the ones she loved. Then finally America, a place she only saw in movies, where snow looked magical until it was on her skin, where English sounded fast, cold, professional. But she endured, because mothers don't chase dreams for themselves. They chase them for their children. And there, in a land of opportunity wrapped with loneliness, she took a job most would overlook. Nanny. Not manager, not executive, not specialist. Just nanny. Just the woman who wipes tears no one else notices, who memorizes the schedule of vitamins and tantrums, who knows which nightlight keeps the monsters away. Just the woman who cooks eggs shaped like hearts, who sews buttons no one else has time to fix, who waits outside school gates, rain or shine, because the child must see a familiar face when the world feels big. Just nanny. But what the world calls just, sometimes heaven calls chosen, because God often hides his warriors in aprons, his healers in house shoes, his protectors in women who carry warmth in their hands instead of weapons. And one day, in a mansion built like a fortress, surrounded by cameras and men in black suits, the world would learn exactly how powerful just a nanny can be. The house she entered belonged to Daniel Mercer, co-founder of one of the most powerful AI companies in America. A man whose inventions guarded borders, whose algorithms protected presidents, whose technology could recognize a stranger's face faster than a mother could recognize her own child's cry. To the world, he was a visionary, a builder of digital empires, a man whose ideas reshaped Silicon Valley itself. But to those who worked under him, who stood in elevators with him in cold silence, who watched him walk past birthdays, conversations, human moments, he was something else. A man who once said, "Trust is a vulnerability. Vulnerability is a threat. I don't allow threats." He spoke it not as a statement, but as a philosophy, a principle carved into steel, etched into contracts, embedded into the design of his home. Because his home wasn't a home. It was a fortress, a sprawling glass and concrete estate secured like a government facility. 70 cameras, each one blinking like watchful eyes. 3 panic rooms reinforced with steel and biometric locks. A private military security team, men who trained like soldiers and moved like shadows. Sensors under floorboards, retina scanners, AI threat prediction software, and an automated lockdown system that could seal every door in 4.2 seconds. Even sunlight needed clearance to enter. Natural light was filtered through glass that calculated heat, angle, exposure before allowing a single ray inside. No corner unmonitored. No moment unwatched. Each breath accounted for. The world admired him. Billionaire, philanthropist, genius, photos on magazine covers, interviews where he smiled just enough to look human. But behind closed doors, those who served him, who walked his hallways, who heard only footsteps instead of laughter, they whispered another name. The fortress. Not because of his walls, but because of the one around his heart, because nothing touched him, not news, not praise, not tragedy, not even the two little lives who shared his blood. He had children, Ethan 8 years old, Mia 6 years old, two bright stars that should have softened a man, yet instead moved around their father like planets around a cold sun. Children who owned virtual reality rooms, education apps personally designed by billionaires, toys worth more than small houses, and yet ate breakfast with their father only through a tinted glass wall because he preferred safety and productivity over presence. He sat in another room, surrounded by glowing screens, muting himself during meetings only long enough to say, "Good morning, eat well, study hard." Then his voice returned to investors, coders, partners, never to his kids. People envied them from the outside. Instagram loved their birthdays. Media loved their vacations. But inside that mansion, loneliness echoed louder than security alarms. You could hear it in the quiet hallways, in the soft footsteps of maids who spoke in whispers, afraid to disturb a silence more fragile than crystal. You could see it in the children's eyes that knew the shape of an iPad better than the shape of their father's embrace. And maybe, just maybe, that's why life sent Alma into that house, not to cook, not to clean, not even to earn, but to bring something money had never succeeded in building: warmth, laughter, presence, family. Alma stepped into the Mercer estate with a simple bag, 2 rosaries, and slippers worn from years of work. She bowed to everyone, smiled gently, spoke softly. Security guards scanned her, questioned her, checked every item she brought. Not one of them asked how she felt after a 14-hour flight. No one cared, except the children. Mia walked forward first, shy, curious, and touched Alma's hand. Ethan followed, holding a broken toy robot missing an arm. "Can you fix him?" he asked. Alma smiled. She took thread from her bag, sat on the floor, and stitched the robot back together carefully, as if it were alive. The boy watched wide-eyed. The girl leaned against Alma's shoulder as though she had known this woman forever. The cameras recorded it. The AI noticed it. But Daniel? He didn't look up. Not yet. Days passed, guards remained stiff, employees rushed like machines, schedules ruled every minute. But the children? They changed, slowly. Breakfast laughter replaced silence. Ethan waited at the window when Alma arrived. Mia carried drawings of her holding hands with a brown-skinned woman smiling in the sun. One night, lightning cracked across the sky. Thunder shook the mansion. The children woke screaming. Bodyguards rushed information, flashlights, weapons, protocol. But Ethan ran past all of them, straight into Alma's arms. Mia, too. She didn't shout. She didn't panic. She simply hummed an Ilocano lullaby, slow and steady. O Narania Gabulan. The storm kept roaring, but their breathing softened. Security recorded the moment, and for the first time, Daniel opened the footage and watched. He didn't understand it, so he replayed it. Then again. Then again. Why did his children run to her, not to protection trained for years? Why did a lullaby, not a weapon, bring peace? That was the first crack in the fortress. It happened on a Friday afternoon. Guests arrived, investors, CEOs, senators. The mansion glittered with power. Ethan and Mia were playing in the garden when suddenly the alarm screamed. Sharp, violent, immediate, red-level breach. Guards scrambled, Gates locked, drones activated like angry wasps. A black van had stopped outside the estate. Unregistered plate, tinted windows, zero response to challenge protocols. Everything unfolded in seconds. Guards formed a shield. Lasers scanned the perimeter. Guns aimed, ready to fire. But in the chaos, in that blur of tactical movement, Ethan panicked. He ran, straight toward the side passage, away from security, away from safety. Mia screamed, "Kuya, wait!" No one reached them fast enough, except one woman. Alma dropped the basket she held, bare feet hitting the pavement, running with a speed no one expected. She grabbed Ethan, shielded Mia, and pulled them into cover behind the garden wall. She didn't think about protocol. She thought like a mother. Heart first, instinct first, child first. The van door opened. Everyone held breath, but instead of attackers, out stepped a delivery driver, confused, terrified, holding a tablet. System glitch. False alarm. Yet the billionaire didn't care about the van anymore. He cared about the footage replaying on every monitor. Dozens of trained men froze in formation. But one Filipina woman moved like lightning. And two children trusted her with their lives, not security her. That night, Daniel sat alone in the control room, watching the moment over and over. The children running, the guards hesitating. Alma's bare feet, her arms around them, her body shielding them without fear. One security captain said, "Sir, protocol was followed. Perimeter risk neutralized." Daniel didn't answer. Another added, "With more training, we can prevent—" He cut him off. Cold, calm, final. "No, the problem isn't the breach. The problem is that my children ran away from security and ran toward someone who wasn't trained to protect them, yet protected them better." Silence. Then he spoke the words no one expected. "You're all dismissed." The entire room froze. Dozens of men, highly trained, highly paid, gone in one breath. And then he said something even more shocking. "From now on, Alma Reyes is responsible for my children's safety." Gasps, confusion, disbelief. A billionaire trusting a nanny over soldiers? Absurd. Yet Daniel looked calm, more human than he had in years. He found Alma in the kitchen washing dishes, humming softly, not knowing she had changed his world. "Alma," he said. She turned, slightly bowing, out of respect. "Yes, sir. Why did you run toward danger today?" Alma didn't answer immediately. Filipinos rarely rush to speak about their heroism. She wiped her hands, looked down, and said quietly, "Because children don't need security first, sir. They need someone whose first instinct is love." Daniel felt something crack open inside him, something he had locked away for decades. "Were you afraid?" he asked. Alma smiled faintly. "Of course. But fear comes second. A child's safety comes first. We mothers know that. Not soldiers, not technology. Mothers. He had built his life on algorithms and firewalls, but this woman had built her strength on love. And love won, not by strategy, but by sacrifice. Days changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but like sunrise creeping slowly across a sleeping town, softening shadows 1 inch at a time. The billionaire who never sat for breakfast now joined the table sometimes. At first only to check schedules, scroll through emails, approve transactions with one hand while the other absent-mindedly toyed with a coffee spoon. But over time, his phone stayed face down longer. His gaze lifted more often. He caught himself listening to stories of Pangasinan, of childhoods without gadgets, of homes built not from steel and glass, but from shared meals and hand-me-down laughter. Alma told them about fiestas where the streets bloomed with colors, where banderitas fluttered like prayers in the wind, where children danced barefoot to rondalla music, and believed that joy did not need permission. She told them about tricycles, how 3 wheels carried entire families, sometimes even 5, laughing all the way to the market, where fish still smelled of morning ocean. She told them about mangoes, sweeter than candy, their juice dripping down elbows, caught by giggles and summer heat. And she told them about her own children, Anna, Joseph, and Leah, faces she saw now only through screens, voices she heard through slow internet calls, hands she hadn't held in years. Her voice never trembled when she spoke of them, but Daniel noticed she blinked more often, as if pushing tears back to where mothers store them, behind strength. He watched how Ethan leaned on her shoulder with a comfort he never showed anyone else. How Mia braided Alma's hair with colourful clips as though decorating a goddess. He began to see something painful, not in them, but in himself. He had given his children wealth, rooms full of toys, computers faster than thought, a playground built on 2 acres of land. But Alma gave them childhood, not programmed learning modules, not AI companions, not educational apps. She gave them what no machine could replicate: presence, warmth, human time. One night it showed more clearly than ever. Mia fell sick, a sudden fever that painted her cheeks red and dimmed her usually bright eyes. The mansion reacted like a war room. Doctors came, machines beeped, data flooded screens, charts glowed with temperature graphs and medication schedules. Yet through all the noise, through all the sterile precision, the little girl cried only one word: Alma. Not mommy, not daddy, not doctor, just Alma. So Alma came. No gloves, no mask, no medical degree, just a cool cloth placed gently on a burning forehead, just a lullaby from home, just a whispered prayer. Lord, heal this child. No complex algorithm, no advanced nanotech, just faith. And somehow, as if heaven responded to that small, sincere request, Mia slept peacefully. The machines continued to beep, but softer now, as though they too were comforted. Daniel stood in the doorway watching. A man who had faced boardrooms, global crises, hostile takeovers, yet never felt as shaken as he did in that quiet moment. Because for the first time, he didn't see a nanny. He saw a mother without her children, loving children who weren't hers with the kind of devotion that money can never hire. And something inside him broke, not violently, but like ice thawing in the first warmth of spring. A single tear escaped, not loud, not messy, just one tear from a man who had forgotten he had a heart that could still feel. Daniel invited Alma into his study, a room no employee had ever entered, a room where glass walls reflected cold success, awards lined in perfect symmetry, books untouched, screens glowing with numbers and markets instead of memories and family photos. It was the kind of room where deals were made, empires built, and lives changed silently. But that night it felt different. The lights were dim, the air was still. The billionaire who commanded cities couldn't command the tremble in his own hands. He gestured for Alma to sit. She hesitated, not out of fear, but respect, then lowered herself gently into the chair opposite him. For a moment, neither spoke. The ticking of the wall clock sounded louder than any board meeting applause. Finally, he asked, "Do you know why I fired them?" Alma shook her head softly. Her hands rested on her lap, still polite, unsure if she was even allowed to look him in the eye. He leaned forward, voice no longer made of steel, but of something new, something human. Machines can detect threats, guards can stop intruders, but only love can make a child feel safe. Alma's eyes shimmered, as if memories of her own children passed through them. Faces she kissed through screens, birthdays she missed while working in strangers' homes. She wasn't used to praise. Most nannies serve quietly, unseen beyond duty. Yet here she was, being acknowledged in the one place praise rarely entered. A billionaire's heart. Daniel continued, voice lower, slower. People laughed when I told them I trusted a nanny over security. He looked at her, deeply, as if searching for answers in her humility. But what they don't know is, you are the only person my children run to when they are afraid. Those words fell like truth finally spoken, like a gate opening after years of rust. He reached into a drawer and handed her a document. Crisp, official, heavy with weight. A promotion. A salary increase higher than any she ever imagined. Numbers that could change her family's future. Build a house in Pangasinan. Send her children to college. Maybe even bring her home someday. Alma stared at the paper, stunned. But then something beautiful happened. She looked up. Not at the salary, not at the signature, but at the man before her. Sir, I don't serve for money. I serve because your children deserve someone who loves them. A sentence simple as rain, soft as a mother's touch, powerful as truth itself. Daniel closed his eyes, breathing slowly. A long exhale that sounded like relief, like regret melting, like a man remembering what it meant to be human. For the first time, someone was not with him for power, not for access, not for status, but for his children's souls. And in that moment, in a room built for business, something sacred entered quietly. Trust. Weeks later, photos of the billionaire walking in public with just one Filipina woman beside his children spread across social media. People asked, where are his bodyguards? Why is a nanny protecting billionaire kids? Is he insane? But then the truth surfaced, and the world fell silent. Because sometimes the strongest shield is not a firearm, but a woman who knows how to pray. Sometimes the greatest protection is not built by engineers, but by motherhood. And sometimes the person you overlook becomes the one you trust with your life. Alma Reyes did not just protect children, she protected their childhood. She filled a house of machines with warmth no code could replicate. And Daniel? He learned something money could never teach. You can buy security. But trust is earned. Love is earned. Respect is earned. And that day, a Silicon Valley billionaire bowed his head to a Filipina nanny whose only weapon was her heart. Because the world often sees Filipinos as workers, helpers, servants, but fails to see the kingdom of kindness they carry inside them. Alma didn't just guard a home. She redefined what security means. Not walls, not guns, not cameras, but a woman who runs toward danger because love moves her feet faster than fear. And maybe somewhere in Pangasinan, a family looks at the sky at night, knowing their mother is changing the world softly. Not with noise, but with presence. Not with power, but with heart. This is not just Alma's story. It is the story of every Filipino abroad who loves beyond duty. Quiet, invisible, yet irreplaceable.